Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all participants around the world. Welcome to our 2026 Going Organic webinar series. I am Dil Tavaraja. I'm a professor at the Clemson University, oversee the Pulse Quality and Nutritional Breeding Program. And our program is sponsored by the NIFA OREI program and South Carolina Department of Agriculture, USDA ARS, and the Global Food Chart. So we acknowledge all our supporters for supporting our program to proceed with the pulse breeding. Today is our first 2026 Spring Going Organic webinar. We are delighted to invite one of the world leading, actually he is one and only, the cabbage and kale and collard and basically brassica breeder, who is one of my great friend, Dr. Phil Griffiths, and he is originally from Southeast Wales in the United Kingdom. When he speak, he just speak like a Briton sometimes, and jokes also the same. So he has lived in the U.S. since 1993, when he started working on vegetable improvement with the tomato breeding program at the University of Florida. After that, he joined the Cornell University. He is the best brassica breeder in the country, and also he's an associate professor. He joined Cornell in 1999. He has been tremendous help with the global crop improvement, especially for Eastern Africa, India, Southeast Asia. He's going to talk many of his experience. You can see he's carrying his purple cabbages. So with that, I am not going to take much of the time because there is an echo. Some of the chat says there's an echo coming, so I'm not going to speak that much. And I'm going to give Dr. Griff to get the floor. Thank you, Dr. Griff.
Good morning, everyone. Currently talking from upstate New York, where it's snowing yet again. So as Dill mentioned, I've been working on brassicas for a long time now. This is going to be my 28th season coming up. Brassicas are a very interesting crop. One species can comprise maybe a dozen morphotypes and 100 market classes. And collectively, they're the third most important crop economically in the planet, and probably the most important crop nutritionally. So depending on where you are is going to depend on the types of brassicas you're going to consume more or less of. The main brassica groupings, of course, are cabbage, in the US, broccoli, in India, cauliflower. But of course, there's many more different types of brassicas, kohlrabi, collard, kale, etc. So the time I've been working on this, I've got to experience really a huge range of growing areas, growing conditions, and just the different sort of demographics and preferences that generally exist. The main focus, I guess, of this webinar is to talk more about the leafy brassicas, which is something that I started to get interested in right around 2008. And that was during a visit to Kenya, actually, on some bean breeding work. And this is actually a picture from Tanzania to the top left And they're producing seed in this image with the older plants. But it's kind of the time that I started getting interested in the leafy brassica types in general. They are extremely important in Eastern Africa, in particular in Kenya. And in Swahili, they're referred to as sukuma wiki, which means to push the week, to have enough food for each week. And they work very well with African production because it takes a lot of the risk out if you're able to harvest your crop on a weekly basis throughout the wet seasons. So the traditional type of African kale, which is really called kale and collard interchangeably, represents a little bit more of a Portuguese kale or Portuguese troncuda type. But more recently, the markets have moved very much more to the Georgia Southern collard type. So now the Georgia Southern collard type represents about half of the consumption and production in Kenya. The Georgia Southern type obviously is a Southeast US collard type. It's got a shorter season, but tends to have bigger leaves and more productive for the period of time it is being grown. So part of this related to Charles, who's down here in the bottom left, who was a PhD student working with me from 2006. And his project was on beans, but towards the end of the time he was here, we started to discuss more and more the opportunities for brassicas in Eastern Africa. So this image is actually from 2010, and this is where we got hold of the collard collection from the USDA, together with the varieties that existed, and started taking a little bit more serious look at collards and leafy brassicas, initially for the Kenya type market. So Charles returned to Kenya, and we've continued to work with him, including a recent project with a graduate student, Hannah, that's seen here. And this has helped us really to bridge efforts in upstate New York with Eastern Africa on the leafy brassicas. This is a small village in Western Kenya where they have a development in gardening initiative for nutrition. And it involves basically planting out these sukuma wiki or African collard gardens to diversify away from, too much corn in the diet, for example. But if you have the production of collard in these areas, it's typically harvested maybe a couple of times a week, and people will have the rights to harvest a certain proportion of that planting, and that means they don't overharvest the leaves because they know that they're going to come back in 3 days or 7 days to collect more of the leaves. So the African kale or collard is harvested in the morning. It's then typically taken to the local markets, and then it's sold either as 5 or 10 leaves in a bunch, or it's chopped up and they charge a little bit more for chopping it up into a bag ready to consume. Of course, you've had a movement to supermarkets everywhere in the world. This is a Carrefour supermarket in Nairobi. And you can see some of the leafy greens that even include Tuscan kale, chard, curly kale. But the leafy greens ultimately are very, very important for the African diet. So it became an initiative for a period of years to try and see what we could do from generation of hybrids, generation of materials with more black rot resistance, generation generally of improved type of materials. So this pivoted off efforts in brassicas in general, but it also went in parallel with a massive increase in consumption of kale in the US salad market that started about 2012, 2013. So this led to a much higher focus on the leafy greens in general, and really trying to look at how we could improve and change the diversity of these products based on foliage color and foliage texture. So, for instance, we started selecting golden brassica types, moving the Savoy leaf of Tuscan kale into Collard, and selecting the deep purple high anthocyanin types. So some of these efforts really started to focus on how we can really do bridge crossing among some of the different morphotypes and market classes and reinvent brassicas a little bit. So if you were to take Tuscan or lacinato kale, which has this darker leaf type, moving it into a green or golden green leaf type, or putting a purple vein on it. And that has also involved taking this darker leaf type and starting to move it into cabbage and collard, which is going to give you this much deeper colored foliage. So if you chop up the collards, the more typical color that you're going to get is this sort of dark green, which seems to be the more preferred type. That would correspond to more of this dark green in the middle here. But if you move to the golden green types, you start to get a color that resembles more of the mainstream salad markets. And then you can also move to a darker, deeper color. And this is where things like the Nova project are now starting to play in, because we're integrating things like nutrition and sensory studies and economics to see what the potentials are of going to a lighter golden green type or to a deeper, darker green type. Because anecdotally, we see a lot of differences that occur in plants across different market classes when we change the foliage color. When we go to the golden green types, we tend to get more tenderness, a little bit sweeter. And when you go to the darker types, especially the blue-green types, you tend to maybe get a bit more fibrousness, a little bit more bitter. And so there's really a change of consumer experience when you move to a lighter foliage or darker foliage, and that also is going to change some of the traits relative to production, how much insects are going to be attracted to it, what's the resilience, for example. So we're starting to really develop a panel that allows us to compare, say, the nutritional profile of a more regular type and how that might vary with the golden green type or with the darker green type. So a lot of the work is really focused primarily on foliage color and foliage texture, with most of the texture focused on this Savoy leaf type with the higher degree of texture, of a leaf texture. So over time, this has helped us to develop a large pipeline across the leafy brassicas. And this has been in parallel with generating hybrid varieties. Hybrid varieties are more uniform. They have much better intellectual property protection. They're much higher yielding, and they allow you to do things that you can't do in OP type varieties. So right now, a lot of the Southeast US market is dominated by older Collard types like Top Bunch or Champion in the OP categories. So what we are looking to do is to really start introducing not just some improved Collard varieties, but also some new color and foliage types. So you can go from a golden green leaf to a light green leaf to a sort of moderately dark type. And then you can actually get through to this almost military green when you start introducing the foliage color from the Tuscan cow. So the Tuscan cow you can see right behind it here, it basically has a darker foliage than you see in any of the other brassica market classes, which is one of the reasons it's referred to as black kale is one of the names for it. Dinosaur kale, Cavallo de Nero, it goes by a lot of different names. So basically we have the ability to produce 5 different color categories of leaf type in the Collard group. And we're also then introducing this new type of Collard, which I'm referring to as Tuscan Collard. This is where we take the high leaf texture that you get in the Tuscan kale and introduce it to both of the Collard parents. And there's a lot of potential benefits to doing this. It is something that can bridge the kale and the Collard market classes in the fact it can be used as a salad green or as in a cooked green. It has the higher degree of texture, which means that you're going to have better shelf life on it once it's harvested. It's going to have much higher dry matter because of the texture, so it cooks down to more product than a flat leaf type would have. And then the plant structure itself can perhaps give it a little bit more climate resilience. So we're looking at the flat leaf in multiple colors and this new Tuscan type in multiple colors, and trying to really move it all into highly productive, highly uniform hybrid varieties to release. The production of varieties is where you need to bridge with seed companies. Brassica breeding is not easy. It takes a lot of time and a lot of patience and a lot of effort. It's not like annual crops like tomatoes or peppers that you can just go and pick a fruit off the plant and you have seed immediately. It's something that takes 12 months to get seed from. Most of the brassica types are biennial, which means they have to go through a cooling period before flowering. A lot of them have a very high level of inbreeding depression, and a lot of them are self-incompatible. So working with them is challenging and expensive. So when we have trials, we dig about 1,000 to 1,200 brassica plants up out of the fields every year, and we'll put them in a cooling facility at about 6 degrees centigrade for 2 to 3 months. What this does is it mimics the winter cooling period, and it enables us to go from seed to seed in about 12 months on a biennial plant that even if you're in the right geographical area, would take you more than 12 months. So we dig these plants up from the field. We will, in the case of collard and curly kale, we will move them back into a greenhouse in early October. About 3 to 4 weeks after moving them in from the cooler, these plants then start to flower, and this enables us to bud pollinate them, to cross them, to set up different cross blocks so that we can generate test hybrids and try and figure out what are some of the better alternates for different markets, different regions. Once we've figured out a good hybrid, which also involves conversion of seed parents to CMS to enable seed production, we can actually scale up the seed production. This is something that's historically been more done by seed companies. There's a limited number of brassica seed companies, so there's a limited amount of experience with this. So I've found that even at a university, we have to start taking it to the next level in starting to figure out some of the seed economics for production of hybrid seed. And you can do this in a lot of places, but with brassicas, it's got to be somewhere that's cool enough, but not too cold. And you've also got to have the expertise in that region. Chile is a primary location for this. Chile has the altitude, the latitude, and the experience to be able to work with biennial crops like cabbage and collard. And you can do this in cages for trials, or you can do it in the open field. So how we would set up a cage would be like this. We have the pollinator on the outside, and then we have 2 different CMS female plants. CMS is male sterile, which means that they don't produce pollen. So this allows us to develop 2 hybrids in the same cage. We just did this with a new rosé cabbage hybrid that is part of the OREI Nova project, which has a lot of benefits if you're trying to integrate and engage growers, because the cage that we did for the rosé cabbage, a 100 square meter cage, we generated about 7 kilograms of seed. That's about 1.5 million seeds, which is enough for probably 100 acres. So when you have that type of quantity, then you can send out seed to a lot of growers to engage people, get feedback on what they like. We're also interested, of course, on how people respond to the different types. This could involve sauteing some different types, just getting some basic feedback, just at Cornell here. Or you can prepare them, in this case chopped up with olive oil, to see how people respond to the more typical dark green Tuscan compared to the mid-green or golden green that's more like a romaine type. And basically partnering with chefs in the Variety Showcase. And the Variety Showcase is something that's part of the OREI Nova initiative as well. We'll have one in New York in August 31st, where we'll be demoing some of these new leafy brassicas and rosé cabbage. We've also been doing that in Kenya, some outreach with a nutritional program in Western Kenya, and cooking the different collards to see how people respond to the different types relative to the ones that they know. So the leafy brassicas are going to be a big part of the OREI Nova project that I'm on with Dill. They'll be in focus in 2026 and 2028. The first year of the project was in 2025, and that's where we had more of a focus on new types of cabbage, rosé cabbage. So it's a cabbage that is intermediate to the green and the red types, which I think that there's a lot of opportunity in that category. If you go into the store, you don't expect only Granny Smith's apples and only Red Delicious apples. So there's a lot of apples that have a lot of that bicolor in the middle. So we'll be demoing these at the Variety Showcase. We did that a couple of years ago with Susie Cups, who's a New York City, Manhattan chef, with some rosé cabbage pancakes. And what we try and do is get a lot of feedback into these new products. So, for instance, we have consumer sensory testing involved with the OREI Nova. And you can see here we've got Bronco green cabbage, Integra red cabbage, and then we have two types of rosé cabbage. This gets consumer feedback through sensory studies as to what people think of the rosé type compared to the green and red cabbage. So it's sauteed. Hybrid 1 has a little bit lighter rosé color. Hybrid 25, a little bit darker. So we're seeing how they compare to the green and the red, but also whether people like the darker color profile or the lighter one. Susie Cups does a lot of sort of fusion type of cooking, especially bringing in some of the sort of more Japanese type of sauces. She says she really likes cooking with it because it's when you have a green cabbage, when you cook it, it tends to go a little bit soft. And when you cook a red cabbage, it tends to be a little bit hard and chewy. So the rosé cabbage ends up in the middle, so it ends up in that kind of intermediate zone. So we want to get feedback from a lot of different sources. This is some rosé kraut that we just got back from Missouri Brinery. It really looks pretty cool when you have it. This is a product, especially as a new product. So I think it's something that brassicas are becoming more trendy. So with chefs, they're starting to adapt it a lot more. We've worked a little bit with Sprout supermarkets. So one of the light rosé hybrids we sent down to CB Farms in Florida, and a large organic farm, Chuck Ober, to do some testing. And this is it being tested in the Orlando Sprout store to see how people respond to the product. So this is an example of the type of work that we're able to do with the OREI Nova project in introducing new types of products as a whole, because I feel like there is a huge market that's untapped for brassicas. As many varieties as currently exist, you can have cabbage with green cabbage, red cabbage, Savoy cabbage. That a lot of the market class types differ between the different morphotypes. So that enables us to do things like rosé curly kale, golden green curly kale, golden broccoli, purple broccoli. This is the rosé cabbage being cooked, or having the Tuscan type leaf, whether that's in a collard or in the golden or the green color. This is a green Tuscan kale with a pink vein, and this is an OP we just released with Johnny Seeds this year called Unicorn Kale. So we're basically exploring a lot of the leafy brassicas into how we can change some of these markets, and going into that knowing more about what people like, how it grows in different regions, what the different nutritional profiles of things are, what are some of the economics and challenges that might exist. This kind of really sets us up for the ability to target the best combinations, the best types, and then, of course, move them through with commercial partners to make them available. The project involves, of course, a lot of people I work with, can't do that without them. It involves a lot of different brassica types and really staying on a structure where you are really planning the development of them structurally throughout the course of the year. It's almost like doing air traffic control, because everything has to be done at a certain time of the year and everything has to be ready when it needs to be ready. So having people who are committed and who are experienced in that, aside from the resources to do things like cooling, is essential. Obviously, the end goal is variety release. We are working on trying to commercialize several different hybrids right now. We have a couple that just came out this fall. We have North Star broccoli in partnership with Beijing. This is a broccoli hybrid that is suited to East Coast conditions and comes out of work from an SCRI East Coast broccoli project. This is now available in Seedway, amongst other different sources. And we also have a more quirky type of OP called unicorn kale, which has been targeted both for the baby green and the mature kale market. It's focused a little bit more on the baby green market. I can see that it's kind of a unique type with a golden green leaf and a purple vein. But it's also very good as a mature type. So this is now available through Beijing, through Seedway. This is now available through Johnny's Seeds out of Maine. With Collards, we are working to connect with companies. We are in the process of signing licenses for 2 hybrids for Eastern Africa with East-West Seeds and Stark Ears. We have a golden collard that we are hybrid that we're looking to introduce with Pan Am out of Illinois, maybe in 2028. And we are then also testing multiple collard types with a lot of the top global companies like Taki, Sakata, Beijing. And a lot of that, I think, is getting good feedback and a lot of interest. So this will go in parallel to the Nova efforts, and that's going to help us really kind of understand really where we need to go and where some of the opportunities for change exist. So that's just a pictorial overview of some of the efforts of leafy brassicas, and I want to keep it within the time. So I'm going to stop the share. We've had snow piled up here for a month. That dumped it about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and it's hasn't really got above 0 since, which hopefully it will in a week or so.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful, very intriguing and inspired. I don't have words. It's beautiful. Some of the comments came from the participants as well. It's absolutely amazing. Before I go to the Q&A, I have some questions or the discussion, because we have quite a bit of PhD graduate students and undergrads participating these talks, and also they watch the video. Can you explain, because this is the phenomenon that they might not very understanding, can you explain inbreeding depression? And if you can explain a little bit more, and what traits will be losing because of that, and how do you overcome that in your breeding program?
So inbreeding depression occurs at different levels in different crop plants. When you have self-pollinating crops like legumes or tomatoes, you get very little inbreeding depression because they're naturally set up to be very homozygous genetically. When you have other crop types, especially outcrossing types, every self-pollination can result in a lot of negative double recessive genes influencing the growth. In some crops like apples, that happens very, very quickly. So you really can't self-pollinate an apple more than 1 or 2 generations. And anytime you have an apple orchard, you can pollinate it with a different variety. That's necessary because the apple or the seed develops from the maternal female type. So with pollination, all you're doing is influencing the gamete within the seed. With brassicas, you can go from an F1 brassica hybrid. If you self-pollinate down to the F4 or F5 or F6, you can lose 50% or more of the yield. So it's very difficult to produce open pollinated varieties because uniform inbred lines have such a massive yield penalty. One of the solutions to this has been that the easy route in brassicas, at least, is using multi-line parents, which they do in Kenya, where you maintain 4 parents and then you intercross them. So you get a range of F1 combinations in the mix of types, which improves the seed production, it improves the overall yield. Or to produce an OP, what people will do is they'll select multiple similar plant types from an F3 population and then intercross all of them in a cage. But you then end up with an OP that's got better seed production and better overall production, but you have a lot of variability in the plant type.
Absolutely.
So you can see that in kale varieties like Dazzling Blue. You plant it out and it's all over the place. Some leaves have some texture, some don't, some are green, some are purple. So you get a little bit of a mix. And people really don't want that. People want uniformity. So that comes back to producing hybrids. And when you produce hybrids, it's not like producing OPs. Yeah. You need to produce 2 hybrid parents that have good complementation with each other. You don't just select parents that have all of the best characteristics and are very similar and cross them with one another. If you're producing a tomato, you might select one parent with heat tolerance and a large fruit, and another parent with disease resistance and higher quality or fruit size.
Right.
And that's also very true of brassicas. Typically the 2 parents of a hybrid look very, very different from the hybrid itself, but the hybrid has to replicate what people are familiar with and what they know. So producing hybrids is about uniformity, IP protection, vigor, but most importantly, complementation.
That is exciting. I wish Cornell students are very happy to have you. So this fall, our brassica breeder, Dr. Sandra, myself, and Boyles, we are teaching a cultivar development course. So we're going to ask you to come talk to our students because that would be wonderful. So let's move back to the questions from the audience. So brassica leafy vegetables are a nutrient source, including minerals, vitamins, fiber, protein, blah, 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 all of that. Because of the moisture content, they are highly perishable, needing refrigerated conditions for transportation and storage. So, what is your thoughts on reducing transportation costs by converting these perishable items into dry powder? If you have any thoughts on that as a breeder?
You lose a lot of the value when you process a product. Transportation depends a lot on the market class. With cabbage, it's very easy, of course, because you can harvest it and store it for an extended period of time. Even if you're moving it, it's not a problem. With broccoli, it would be more difficult because you tend to have to be within markets um, within 24 hours. The nutrients also um, vary considerably between the different market classes. The One of the driving factors for doing the Savoy collards, especially for Eastern Africa, is initial nutrient studies have shown that the high texture Savoy types have very high levels of carotenoids. Carotenoids are the number one nutrient deficiency in the world. So when you have this new Savoy collard type, you get both high levels of nutrients and improved transportation and shelf life, because a Savoy collard leaf might last 5-10 times as long before wilting. So the ability to move it around with or without transportation. As far as processing, obviously you get cauliflower is used increasingly, but a lot of the nutritional value, I think it depends on the crop. It depends on the part of the plant that you actually utilize. And it depends what you mean by nutrition with the different nutritional groups as well. Something like kale is very big in vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin K. It's also very high in some of the carotenoids like lutein and zeaxanthin that are found directly in the eyes, showing its importance with macular health.
That's right. Yes. That would be great. Having a powder sometimes to add into a smoothie.
Certainly there are, I mean, you get kale chips, you get kale powder, you get cauliflower flour, there are derivatives, but their value is very limited.
Right.
And even the uptake, ultimately the uptake, it's always better to have whole foods.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm with you. So, okay, here's a question from our garden team. And why are rose-colored cabbages being developed? I love trying out new things and never grow the same, but I understand that human nature generally stick with what they know and tend to not try new things. So the question is like, why did you develop the rose colored cabbages?
Uh, well, I'd say rosé because it represents like wine,
Right.
and it's ultimately it's a pink, but because it's a mosaic, rosé is more appropriate. If you go to France, which is a large wine consumer, they consume more rosé wine than white wine or red wine. Pink vegetables in general are becoming of more interest. Pink pineapple, pink celery, uh, just intermediate types. Um, it it originated from working with a lot of different red and purple cabbages, looking at natural colors and seeing how interesting they were when you make a red times green type crosses. Most crosses don't work. Some of them look very interesting. It gives a different aesthetic and it can give different texture. And it can also add to the foods are fun type of category. Uh, so We generated 7 kg of seed, and we've had a lot of interest from a lot of growers. We sent it out to about 100 places last year for testing and feedback. I've had kraut sent back from 3 different growers who used it to produce the pink kraut. There's interest certainly from chefs. There's interest from progressive supermarkets like Sprouts. There's interest certainly from organic growers and small growers and farm to market growers. And it really breathes more life into legacy crop markets like red and green cabbage. People want new and people want different.
Yes, I wish we can have this in the South Carolina grocery store. It's just very rarely I see a roasted cabbage. That come to my final question. I saw the golden broccoli, which I don't see in the grocery store here, which is beautiful. I'm sure it has a lot of carotenoids as well. And also unicorn kale. When can these available to the public? That I know it's in the New York area, high chef kind of. So
Unicorn
yeah,
kale you can buy now from Johnny's.
Johnny's. Okay, so the seeds, but is this like a commercial production, like the
It's the initial sort of testing of it.
Okay,
They have it in 3 places in their catalog under premium microgreens, baby greens, and mature.
okay,
It's a great plant as a mature plant. It's got a very upright plant type. Looks very different, very cool. So that's available to grow and test. The golden broccoli is a lot further off in the availability. The rosé cabbage, we have a couple of companies may be interested in rolling out availability of seed in 2028. So
that would be
it
great.
looks promising that that would be available for commercial sales 2 years from now.
I hope you would work with our larger scale growers so then in South Carolina we can have these beautiful kale and broccoli like with WP rolls. They really like your work. This leads to a last question because of our students. Are these seeds open public to open like your breeding material? Is it open to the public or is it like had to go through Bejo Seed? So I know you work with the company.
Well, because there's a lot of Me Too breeding that goes on, the brassica world has mostly moved to CMS hybrids to protect the IP.
Okay.
So when you have CMS hybrids, you release them, but then they're not available to use and cross with. So only the OP types people could do that with, but the hybrid types they couldn't.
Okay. Gotcha. I actually went over for 3 minutes because it was so exciting and it's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing this. I'm hoping to see you at the variety showcase in the fall with your cabbages, and hopefully we can taste quite a bit material with my piece. Thank you so much, Griff. And I wanted to tell the audience our next speaker is Dr. Porter, Dr. Lyndon Porter. He's the pulse pathologist at the USDA ARS working on the organic seed inoculants because we're trying to bring all the organic breeders as well as the pathologists to help our growers, consumers, and everyone, especially our students. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining. And I will see you all on March 11th, 2026. Thank you so much. Goodbye.